My great-grandfather owned a penny arcade in the 1910s and 20s, and he got into bow hunting and made this bow and arrow case out of an old pinball machine. See? Later, my grandma, his daughter, painted it black and used it for whatever, and now my mom has asked me to repurpose it for a third time. I'll start by breaking this thing down into smaller pieces, which meant fighting the 65 flathead screws present in all antique furniture. Drawers and doors off, I get hit with the first surprise.
If I can get it. There we go. That's probably a really old pinball. Cool.
And then found out why those old school pocket screwdrivers have a magnet on the end.
That thing actually came in handy.
Several more stubborn flatheads in the arrow and bow racks are freed from the back panel, and I get one round out of it. I decided the back panel needed to be replaced as there is significant warping and delamination, probably from water damage. This meant removing those glued-on corner blocks, which seem like they're covered in Bondo or something, so I just chipped away at them, trying not to damage the side panels. I also noticed these breather holes on the top. Don't know what those are for. It looked like the back was just held on by those corner blocks, but I found out it was actually sitting in a dado, which makes sense, so I just cut close to the edge and then broke it out of the groove. Some rubber strips come off, as well as some more paraphernalia, and I can start removing the black paint. Now I don't know what era this paint is from, and I'm trying to follow my kid's example and be a bit more safety-minded, so I'll mask up for this. For the door fronts, I'll just try and be cautious as to not accidentally frost the glass, and try and scrape off the glue that held these leaves on there. The heat gun helped with this. All that black paint came off easy, but on the sides of the carcass, it did not. My 80 grit sandpaper would die after about a minute of sanding, but I did get to see the evolution of this thing from gray to blue to yellow to cream to black. I tried a card scraper to get that top layer off, but in the end it just came down to sitting there and burning up about 30 discs. The inside went down to bare wood much easier, but did require some manual action. You can see that glued up side panel has these bands of dark green running through it, and I wasn't sure what my mom was going to think of that, so I made up some swatches with various stain colors and had a FaceTime consultation before moving forward. On to figuring out this back panel. How do you get a panel into a full dado without disassembling the carcass? I toyed with ideas about hiding individual panel seams behind shelves, but then I figured out I could just cut the lip of the top off, size the panel, and beat it into the dado from the top. I'm still confused about how that top lip that I cut off was able to fit back on nearly perfectly, even with the kerf width of the blade removed. Everything is now ready to get stained. Now if you landed on this video with hopes of some type of staining tutorial, I'm sorry to disappoint. I'm not your guy, as I'm not into staining. I don't know much, but what I do know is you have to use the pre-stain conditioner on softwoods, so that gets done first. While I let that dry, I'll clean off the paint from the hardware with some lacquer thinner, and come back with some red chestnut stain. It doesn't completely hide those green pieces, but I think the point was to still see that this thing was her grandfather's pinball machine, and that was the material used in that era. The next day a top coat goes on, and I can call the wood coloration process complete. The bow and arrow racks that I removed at the beginning, I'll cut down to become the shelving for toothpick holders, which is her new intended purpose for this cabinet. I'll put back on the other bits and bobs, including the breather hole grill, drawer pulls, and wax those runners so the drawers slide easier. This may be obvious to some, but to others it's a handy trick. When you need to mark hole locations blind, and without measuring, get your piece set where you want it and use blue tape to reference its location. Then pivot the piece forward and mark where you want your screws to go. Then drill tiny locator holes through the face, and glue your piece on with super glue, referencing your blue tape. Now you can go back and pre-drill and screw in from the back without the worry of missing. One more flathead screw marathon for the hinges, and here's what you came for. I like how this piece shows its age and the materials that it was made from, and kept a little bit of that black to show the progression through the generations of repurposing. There you go, Mom. Enjoy.